Good afternoon. Welcome to today's webinar. My name is Joshua. I'm going to be your presenter today. Welcome to everyone. It's promptly 1 o'clock here Eastern Time. We're going to go ahead and get started on our event here. Just a few technical things before we get started on our topic today. Basically, suggested audit procedures. We're going to be together till 1:20 Eastern Time. I will do my best to wrap everything up at the 20-minute time slot there at the very end. At least with the topic at hand, if you've seen what you came to see at any point during the presentation, of course, please don't hesitate to choose File on the webinar control panel, choose Exit, Leave Webinar. These are recorded and later placed on our website for review. So you can always come back and revisit this. If for some reason you're called away and you need to leave, of course, you can always come back and revisit that on our website. If you have questions, please type those into the questions portion of the webinar control panel. I will do my best to keep an eye on those, and I'll see what I can't do to answer. I'll stick around at the end and see what we can't do to get those answered. There is a handout in today's webinar, so if you expand the webinar control panel, go down to the handout section, you'll see the document called Audit Procedures PDF file that's attached to this. You can print that. That's the exact same printed material that I'm using for the webinar event today. And if, of course, you're unable to find that, please contact us. We'll certainly be happy to get that to you. It's on our website under our support center. But we're certainly happy to email it to you as well. Please keep your questions on topic, meaning about our audit procedures, what have you. There may be another webinar event that we're going to schedule here that's better suited to answer your questions about something else you have about Church Windows. Or, of course, you're welcome to contact our support staff, myself included, 800-533-5227. And ask, and we'll have one-on-one support care for you anyway. So, you're also always welcome to get your questions answered individually as well if you wish. So, let's go ahead and talk about our topics here. So, the first thing these 9 steps that we have detailed on this document are, this document is simply designed to give you some ideas about things that you may want to review in accounting, okay? It's not all inclusive. It's not, it's not necessarily every step or every option that you have available. These are just some things we strongly recommend that you consider looking at, or ways of being able to do some internal auditing on your own that will help verify the integrity of the church's data and, of course, their books. As it points out there, Computer Helper Publishing cannot assist in determining which specific items should be reviewed for an audit or assist with the audit itself, okay? So we're just going to go through a few things here, some of which I can actually show you in Church Windows and some of which would require documentation outside of Church Windows that you would have hard copies of in your church, and I'll certainly do my best to address that when we get to those sections. So first of all, the number 1 there talks about compare a sampling of selected batches in donations to deposits on the bank statements for some selected or given weeks, okay? So basically, it gives an example of the batch reports for a given week, $2,500, verify that it equals the deposit per the bank statement for that same week. There's some simple ways in Church Windows that we can get this to occur, okay, that we can absolutely verify that the data in Church Windows in donations and in accounting matches up. So if I go up to, say, into donations, go to reports and export, it even talks about there using the summary of cash activity or transaction journal in accounting, and in donations, the log report. I do like the log report for this. So when we go to our log report, we're going to go ahead and change our year back here to 2020. We're actually doing some internal auditing for 2020. Then what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go up to the Group and Sort tab. We're going to do Group Sort by Field 1 is going to be donation date. We're going to check Group by Field 1 totals only, and we're going to click Print, okay? And then from there, what that's going to do is it's going to show our total donations by date in 2020. Okay, so I've got January 5th and 12th and 19th, which were all Sunday dates in 2020, if I recall correctly. We typically post those with Sunday's dates. So I would print that report. That tells me what I've posted into donations, okay, for each one of those dates, all right? So then I would close out or minimize donations, and then we're going to jump into accounting this time, and then we're going to go up to say, now there's, again, different ways you can do this. You can do the summary of cash activity or the transaction journal. I'm frankly kind of fond of the transaction journal myself, okay? So how we would do that is we go up to reports and export, transaction journal. I can even go so far as to choose a specific asset account if I wish. So right here, let's say I choose my Huntington Bank checking. Over here, I would do my clear all and maybe choose just my DONA or donation transactions. Again, going to my group and sort field, date occurred, group by field 1, totals only, and click print. And right here it shows, January 5th, 12th, 19th, 26th. Same amounts are showing as posting to my main checking account that match my donations log report when I've got it grouped by date. So again, folks, there's ways in reporting in both church windows, in both donations and accounting, that you can get the information that you're seeking to verify that there's consistency in the data that you have entered in both modules. Now, if they're not the same, that's not necessarily an indication of anything that's improprietous or anything wrong. There may be a particular reason why something was entered in donations and not transferred, but we would want to probably try to find some answers for that if possible. Number 2, review the year's bank reconciliation and bank statements, paying particular attention to credit debit memos and other charges from the bank. Reports to review and accounting would be summary of cash activity or bank reconciliation. Folks, you can always go back into a prior year and access the bank reconciliation for a prior year, whether they're finalized or not, okay? So by way of checking that, what I want to point out here is I have changed my accounting year back to 2020, so I am actually in there. That's the only way I can then access my bank reconciliations for 2020. So I would now go to my bank reconciliation. Whoops, after I get my regular drawing tool back here. Give me just a second. So I now go back to my bank reconciliation. Here, I choose the asset account I have in question. Then down here, I would go down to my select to saved bank reconciliations. And folks, just because mine say no under finalized doesn't mean that they can't. If yours say yes under finalized, you can still choose them, go to print or next, and still look at the bank reconciliation. Finalized simply means we can't make changes to it. Okay, so if I go to my September bank rec and I know go down to print, or I verify I don't have a zero difference to reconcile, folks. So, but just letting you know, you can access these bank reconciliations and you can either print the bank rec reports if you don't have them, but I would absolutely want to verify that all of the bank rec reports that I have for the prior year are matching up with them, and if so, assuming they're still zero, I would want to make sure that all the reports I have are current with a zero difference, and I would print those. While I'm at it, I could also check either the bank rec or the activity summary for those bank reconciliations as well. So number 3 then, and we'll look at the summary of cash activity here momentarily, folks, in terms of what that report looks like. Some of you may not be using it, but it is a very helpful report. We'll look at that momentarily. Number 3 talks about selecting a small sample of checks that have cleared the bank and go back into the supporting documentation, paid invoices, receiving reports, bills, what have you, that you have to make sure that the charges, one, were approved internally and that the church received the item and that it was charged to the proper account, okay? So typically, maybe what we might want to do here is, you would go up into your transactions here and browse, or go to your transaction journal. So here we can go to transactions, transaction journal, and then right here, we can ask for certain specific information. Like maybe I want to just choose, bills and payments as they pertain to, say, one particular vendor or payee. Okay. Again, you decide what this is. Okay. So let's say I have, be sure you're covered insurance. I would choose that. And if I check just bills and payments and click print, it does allow me to see all of the bills and payments that I've posted in the respective period for that particular vendor or payee. It does allow me also then, I can go in and customize certain column information with maybe some specific information columns, okay, if I want. Your choice, you decide, okay? But again, that one talks about the transaction journal as a means of being able to verify that. Number 4, make sure all check numbers are accounted for. Reports to review would be the check register. This is under reports, transaction in the upper left, and check register. So we choose the check register. We choose the year, accounting year. I would choose the particular checking account in question. Let's say my Huntington Bank checking. It will default to the whole year. That may be a little much, more than you want to review, so you can ask for just simply a snapshot or a slice of that year. So maybe we want to ask for, January 1st through January 31st of 2020. Again, I would go to print. It now opens up all of my payments that came out of my withdrawals that came out of my Huntington Bank checking account in January of 2021. Here's my check numbers. Here's the amount. These other ones here are direct deposit payroll transactions that I've got posted. Folks, I don't have a huge database here, just some sample data. But down here, notice I do have some checks that are voided. So if those were voided checks, say spoiled checks, I would then want to ask to see the actual spoiled checks, a folder with checks that were spoiled, okay? So I could verify that that check stock is accounted for, okay? Again, this all kind of ties back to our bank reconciliation as well. If my bank reconciliations are not at 0, then my church windows is not lining up with my bank, and it would certainly raise questions and red flags, to say the least, okay? So again, make sure all of those check numbers are accounted for, no gaps in those check number sequencing, and if so, we would want an explanation as to where those check numbers were, okay, or why they're not here, okay? So again, check register, new report here that we haven't talked about now. So number 5, if the church has a budget for expenses, compare recorded amounts to budget and investigate all the differences over a certain dollar amount or percentage. So the treasurer's report is what we're going to look at now with regards to that. And there's some really great examples of this here. So what it's talking about here is when we go to treasurer's report, and I'm going to look at this, we're going to look at this for the entire year, because again, we're wanting to compare our budget to actual for 2020. Okay, so now when I go, you'd want to maybe visit the columns tab and determine what information columns you determine are helpful for you. And then when we, sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself again. We're just running short on time, and I want to make sure I get as much in here as I can. Notice right here in the middle, we've got the button, the checkbox that says display asterisk for over budget items right here. Okay, that becomes really important when we're trying to determine where we stand with our budget and our actual expenses for a particular period of time. Okay, so now when I click on print, and it brings up my treasurer's report, here's our income, and then we slowly go down here into our expenses, and then when we get down into our expense accounts, we're going to go into page 3, I think, no, 4, go down here into 4, and we've got an example of this right here. So right here, we've got our property insurance account, expense account that shows an asterisk next to it. Our year-to-date balance was $3,614.80, but our actual year-to-date budget amount was only $3,214. So now whether that means we just misbudgeted on that, maybe our insurance rate went up, maybe something else occurred. Another example of it is further down this page here where we have our library expenses where we were $667 in actual expenses, but only budgeted $652. That doesn't mean anything other than that we spent more on our library expenses than we'd originally budgeted. That's maybe all these are, but there could be indications of other things going on if, maybe we need to revisit how we're budgeting those for the future years, okay, or for the next year, or maybe we need to run the general ledger and make sure that everything is appropriately charged to those expense accounts, okay? So use the treasurer's report for that. Number 6, compare the payroll amounts to the salary wage authorized. Make sure that the related payroll reports 941 and tax deposits were filed with the taxing authorities. Reports to review would be in accounting, say the general ledger, or in payroll, your pay period deductions report. Good idea. So we're going to look at our general ledger this time. And by way of an example of how we do that is, yes, you'd want to go through the folder or files that the church has, make sure that somebody's appropriately filed the 941s as they were submitted last year or for the prior year as necessary. But then when I've gone in and verified that those are filed, certainly am I receiving correspondence from the IRS indicating maybe they haven't received a tax deposit from us. But right here, we're going to click on our 941 taxes payable. We're going to go to print on our, right here on the right. It opens up the 941 taxes payable. I'm going to uncheck all of my transaction types except for payments. Those would verify what payments I posted in 2020 through the 2020 year and click print. Okay. So then here, once I open this up, it shows I've got, my deposit schedule. Again, folks, I've got a partial database. If I had my monthly deposit schedule was monthly, I would have at least 11 or 12 payments in here. These amounts right here, I would then cross-reference those with the pay period deductions report for each one of my months to make sure that the amount that payroll said I owed matched up with the actual amounts that were actually paid. So I would print this general ledger report for these payments, and then I would jump into payroll, and I would go into, say, my 2020 payroll year. Am I in 2020? Yes, I am. And then I would go to something like my reports, pay period deductions report, run this, say, for January 1st through whatever my deposit schedule is. So if yours is semi-weekly or quarterly or monthly, you're going to enter it there. We go to next. Bear with me here. So we see down here, down the left-hand side of our pay period deductions report, our 941 deposit is 21/15/12. If I recall correctly, on my general ledger report in accounting, it showed that amount for the month of January. I would simply continue down the process each month checking that, or at least, grabbing some intermittent or sporadic reports or periods during the year to make sure that those payments match up. Number 7, review the transaction journal for such items as journal entries or transfers. Okay, that's a good one too. So right here again, we would go back up to our transaction journal. So we would go to reports, transaction journal. It's going to default to the whole year, but right here maybe I can do clear all and check just my journal entries and my transfers, and then print those, and that will again print all of the transfers and journal entries to make sure that those were facilitated correctly. Transfers are important, of course, because they represent a shifting of money, sideways typically, moving from account A money from account A to account B. So often asset transfers are important, moving money from checking to savings or from fund to fund or what have you. So you would want to print the transaction journal for that and verify those. Number 8, we're talking about review pass-through collections and verify the collected amounts were forwarded to the proper parties. This is a great one. So first of all, again, I like to show by example here. We're going to run a couple minutes long, folks, here. I'm so sorry. So right here, when I run my balance sheet as of December 31st of 2020, and go to print, we've chosen to handle our pass-throughs in this section on our balance sheet called pass-throughs. Right here, let me draw some focus with my highlighter. So right here, I've got total pass-through accounts. So we notice that on our balance sheet, those are all showing a 0 year-to-date balance at the end of 2020. That's my first checks and balances. Have I brought in those monies and paid them out in the same year that they were given? So if I check that, and they're the balance sheet for the end of the year, and they're at 0, then anything I put into it, I've paid out. If not, then that would indicate that there may be a balance that I would need to still owe them, or maybe we didn't want to write that check until the next year. But once I have that, then again, I would go back to my chart of accounts, say, find crop walk. So right here, go to my print button on my general ledger, year to date through December 31st, click print. Sure enough, here's my payment for crop walk for $465 that I had. It looks like I had a balance that I brought forward from 2019, but I did pay that out mid-year of 2020. Okay, So again, if you've got pass-through accounts set up, whether they're funds or liabilities or what have you, you want to check those pass-through monies and make sure they're paid out appropriately or accounted for properly. And finally, if there are any funds or others other than the general fund, review the disbursements to make sure they have been charged to that fund. Reports to view would be the fund activity report or general ledger. One of the most commonly overlooked reports, folks, in the software, yet most important, is our fund activity report. So if I go to reports, financial, right here, fund activity report, I can do detailed, consolidated, or consolidated selected month or year to date. We're going to take a peek at the detailed report. So we're going to choose a particular fund. So we're going to do unselect all. And let's choose, say, our building fund. Whoops. Let's move over the fund for the selected report. Click print. So it looks like I had a beginning balance in 2020, but I had no income or no expenses, okay? But it does detail the summary on that, okay? If I can also do that on my general ledger as well. So if I go up to reports, transaction, and into my general ledger, I could come right up here to where it says fund and choose building fund, say, and it will show me all of the transactions that posted to any account linked to that fund for the year in question. Let me see if I had something under education building fund. Nope, no activity in 2020. Sorry, folks. So in any case, I've gone a couple minutes long, folks. I'm so sorry. So we're going to end things there.